Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Golgo 13, top secret episode brought to us by Vic Tokai. Golgo 13 is based off of the manga series of the same name, featuring the titular character, also known as Duke Togo, who is set off to destroy the head of the evil Drek group. As we begin though, we get a bit of story before we jump into the game itself. We make it finally to the main menu screen where we're going to press start and jump into Act Number 1, the Iron Curtain. There's a total of 13 acts in Golgo 13. There's also a lot of dialogue and text you'll get to read throughout the course of the game for the various characters. All the cutscenes kind of take place in this same sort of scenario, with you kind of staring at the camera first and then turning around to look at whoever slowly walks onto the screen. Once we finally gain control of Duke Togo, we're going to start off heading over to the right. You're able to move, jump, and attack. You can jump in the air and do a jump kick, which is pretty effective, and we're going to do that right away in order to gain a little bit of ammo from the first enemy. Some characters aren't going to hurt you. They're just NPCs that will give you a little bit of dialogue, so usually for the most part I'll just avoid them by jumping over them if possible. All throughout the game you have these target sections where you have to move the reticle around in a first-person-like mode in order to fire out at the various enemies that are around. Thankfully it tells you how many of the enemies you get to deal with during each segment, so you know how many more you have left, but they are constant and you have to do them all throughout the game from beginning to the absolute end. Over here you'll reach the Frederick Station. Make sure you enter inside there for the next little cutscene. Once you have control of Duke again, keep heading off over to the right side. He does move rather slowly, but this actually works well. That jump being as high as it is helps you get over a large portion of hazards and enemies. One thing though that's absolutely annoying in the game is when you fire your gun, you only fire straight. You can't duck and fire the gun, so enemies will consistently duck and fire at you that way and you won't be able to hit them, so you'll have to jump over their potential attacks. Here we run into another one of these target segments. Thankfully, every time you defeat an enemy, you gain a little bit of your health back, as well as you'll also gain bullets back. Usually once I gain at least 10 bullets from the beginning of the game, I've never really run out of ammo throughout the rest of it. Health-wise though, health is very easy to lose in the game. There's no real invulnerability. You can get hit multiple times pretty quickly. And because of this, your health can get drained rather fast as well. Make sure you enter into the Alexander station here in order to get the next cutscene. This is actually the end of this section, and we get to move on to Act 2 here, which begins with a scrolling shooter segment. Act number 2, the moving target, begins with this helicopter segment. It's not the most exciting of the different types of gameplay throughout the course of this one. It's a little bit sluggish for a scrolling shooter for my personal taste, but still, it breaks up the gameplay for sure, and you have several of these throughout the course of the game. These ships are pretty annoying, and they either come at you from above or right at that spot below, depending upon your current altitude. Usually I like to hang out near the middle bottom portion of the screen unless I'm dealing with a certain enemy, like right there. Just keep moving away from him, trying to take him out before he reaches me. They do deal a lot of damage to you, but thankfully you're able to best them usually and gain that health back. Just be sure not to run into the ships themselves. If you get hit, just get hit by the bullets. It won't do as much damage. That isn't always the case with some enemies. Some enemies you actually rather get hit by them than by their bullets, and that's usually the later parts of the game. Unfortunately, even during these segments, you end up having these target segments. Here we have helicopters and planes to deal with. The helicopters are hard to hit initially when they first show up, but then they come back a few seconds later in around the same spot, and that usually gives you a better opportunity to deliver fire to them because they'll then start firing at you, which usually hits you. But thankfully, usually, if you get hit, then destroy them, you'll end up gaining that health back. Once back into the main vertical shooter segment here, it's pretty much more of the same, and it really doesn't even change up for the other scrolling shooter segments that we'll be doing a little bit later on. Once we reach the tower here, we go to the next segment here. You only get to do this twice in the game, where you actually get to snipe, which is what Duke Togo is most famous for doing, is sniping enemies. I guess that's what you're doing in the target segments, but it doesn't really feel the same. Here you get the moving close on an enemy and actually fire at them to snipe them and complete that segment. It's not the end, though, of the chapter, though, or act, so head over to the left once you gain control of Duke again. Be careful of motorcycle enemies. When they come towards you, they may sometimes jump, other times they're just going to go straight. You just kind of have to take a gamble at what you decide to do when you see one. However, when they go past you, they will come back flying at you. If you turn around quickly, you can fire at them, but this game is not good about turning around. If there's another enemy close by, you're going to still face them. Like, the game wants you to face the enemy forward from you. So when you try to turn around quickly, sometimes you may find Togo walking backwards instead of actually turning around, which is a real nuisance. So a lot of times it's best to deal with enemies either as soon as you see them or just ignore them and get past them as quick as you can. Unfortunately, though, like I said, with the motorcycle guys, you don't have as much of a choice with them. Keep traveling over to the left and you'll come to another one of these target segments. I'm going to take out all the soldier guys on the bottom and then get up into the air to deal with the couple of helicopters. Like I said, when they first appear, sometimes you can destroy them, but it's just really difficult to get them taken care of before they disappear that first time. Not a whole lot of action during this segment, a lot of NPCs and the like as we make our way over to the left and then on to the next screen. Right after a motorcycle, hey look, more targeting. Thankfully it's just some regular soldier guys all on the ground level. They will get some shots off on you probably before you destroy them, but not too difficult. Finally, we come to the Potsdam station where we get our next cutscene. Once you leave there, head over to the right now. A little bit of backtracking, but that's kind of what happens here with Golgo 13. Thankfully, the cutscenes, though, for the most part, give you good hints. They tell you the locations, landmarks, and the like of where you need to go to next, so you usually don't get too lost during these town segments. There's not a lot of cryptic information that's getting to you, that's giving you wrong information or anything like that. Unfortunately, the 3D mazes that we'll be doing throughout the game, those are a little bit tricky and more confusing. I'm someone who has never been the biggest fan of 3D first-person mazes. Unfortunately, I made a small mistake. It's one of the few ones I end up making during the course of this, but I passed the building that we needed to enter, and I go too far over to the right, and end up going back into another one of these. So you're getting one more target segment than I would have liked, so I apologize for that, but thankfully they don't take too long for us to get through these target segments usually. A lot of the buildings look similar to one another, and when you play the game quite a bit, it's easy to forget, oh, which ones I'm supposed to enter at which time. But here is the Alex Hotel. What a lovely cutscene, Golgo 13. Yeah, get some lovin'. And also replenishes our health. Once we leave the hotel, we're going to keep heading now over to the right side. Unfortunately, we have to do this segment again, the one we just did a moment ago. So, like I said, easy to forget that you had to enter that one building. As soon as I hit the target segment, it was like, oh crap, I walked too far. Thankfully, we don't have to travel, though, that far to get to our next goal. Once you're onto that next screen, you'll come to this big green building. It's the Green Mansion. Now, after the cutscene, it's Act 3, The River of No Return, and it's our first scuba diving segment. We have a couple of these throughout the course of the game as well. Like I said, it's really cool that Golgo 13 mixed up the gameplay the way that they did. And considering he's similar in some ways to James Bond in the way that his stories and the like go, it would have been interesting to see a James Bond game on NES that had taken a similar approach. Would have been more interesting than James Bond Jr. on the NES, that is for certain. If you're unfamiliar with the Golgo 13 series, I do highly recommend checking it out. There actually is a sequel NES game as well that was made called The Mafat Conspiracy, but considering it was just kind of called that, it's sometimes not really realized that, oh, it's a sequel to Golgo 13. Once we make it inside this base, start heading over to the left. You have these captain people on these platforms. It's a common enemy you'll be dealing with throughout the rest of the game. They take 4 bullets to destroy. They're very annoying. But even more annoying are these. These turret things that fire out like this, these very destructive darts. You can jump over them, but at the same time it can be difficult to time it where you can jump over the bullet and then jump over the next ones as they fire out. A lot of times with them, I prefer to get hit by the machine instead of the bullets. It's one of those enemies where it's much better to get hit by the machine, which only will take away a little bit of health compared to the bullets. At the end of the segment, though, you'll go right into the next cutscene. This leads us to our first-person segment. As soon as we walk over a few steps, we're going to fall down to the bottom floor here. It's going to be hard for me to give you exact directions that I'm doing throughout this, just because it moves pretty quickly. But I hopefully take it at least a little bit slow at times where you can tell somewhat of the paths that I'm taking. To fire at the soldiers, you have a few enemies during the course of these first-person perspective mazes. You have to hit the button to get the reticle up, and then point at whichever enemy or direction you want, then hit it again in order to fire. It's kind of weird, but you kind of get used to it in these segments. Sometimes you'll come to walls that you'll have to destroy. You use your grenades in order to do that. You have a limited number, but when you destroy a soldier, you get them back. Thankfully, this first maze isn't too bad. There is a maze a little bit later that is just a nightmare and took so long in order to figure it out and actually be able to get through it. Thankfully, we get out of that, and now we are done with Berlin and heading to Greece. In Act 4, A Farewell to Arms. Here we are in Athens. We're going to start off heading over to the right side. I love the background and scenery throughout the course of the Athens segment. And not long into it, we run into our first target segment. This one has a few helicopters that we mainly have to deal with. Sometimes tracking them down, getting them to appear can be a little tricky. And usually when they do, they get a couple of shots off as well. A lot of times it's better just to run through these enemies instead of actually trying to deal with them. Firing at them from behind instead of from the front. As you can see, they like to duck a lot of times. Keep going on the next screen over to the right, you'll be greeted by a couple of motorcycles. Then, right after that, you'll come to a hotel, enter inside for the next cutscene. We're given a hint that we need to go to the other side of the Parthenon, so head backwards a little bit from where we currently are. Deal with these motorcycles if you want to, they are a real nuisance for sure. But head over to the left and hit up right here. And then you want to hit left and up right here again. And then just a couple of steps up again through a clearing, right where the Parthenon actually is. And you'll go to this part. It's kind of confusing a little bit how that works, but this is where we were trying to get to. And right after we make it to this part, we run into another target. Thankfully, my health is okay at this point, so that the few shots I do end up taking from these enemies, I'm able to replenish with each one I destroy, but that won't be the case later on. I'll have to be more cautious. There are times, especially the last of these segments before the final boss, that you can have your health drain in just a matter of seconds. Here we make it to the concert hall, and that's our next cutscene. Right after the cutscene, keep going over to the right side. You'll be introduced to two new enemies. The kind of ninja girl that does flying kicks, and the bazooka shooting person. The bazooka bullets are pretty dangerous. Thankfully, they are dodgeable, but they are quite annoying. Right after that segment, though, you'll drop down and make it to another target segment. This one's a little cool, just because of the way the background and all is set up. Also during this, you have a ship, a submarine to destroy. It's just funny shooting it with a single, thing, and it just blows up. Watch out for the landmines that are lacing the ground here. You can do some jumps over them to get past them, and once you jump off the right side here, you make it to the next cutscene. This leads us into the next scuba segment. Start off by heading off over to the right side, watching out for the other scuba divers, as well as the fish enemies or whatever they are that are trying to attack you as well. A little bit in, you'll have to do an underwater target segment. You just have to destroy all these scuba divers. Just moving around, you'll see them appear, and then you'll be able to get your shots off on them. Sometimes a nuisance to actually get them to show up. And they do like to go kind of like all over the place as you're working your way around this screen. Eventually, they will show up, and thankfully when you get that last one, it gives you an arrow to kind of tell you where it's located, so you at least know what the direction to go for the final one. Once out of the segment, just keep on heading to the right. I like to go near the top. Usually it's a safer spot to be away from the scuba divers that are going to be below us. When you make it to this building looking thing, swim on down and it'll go automatically into Act number 5. Here we have another base. This is pretty much identical as far as what you're going to do here that we did in the last base. Just more enemies to deal with. There's a few of these segments throughout the course of the game. Thankfully, you can jump between the two levels, and I recommend doing so to avoid some enemies. When you reach the ladder at the end, you make it to the next cutscene. Once out of the scene, just keep on heading back over to the right and back into the water. Like I said, a lot of these enemies you can dodge just by jumping in between. Sometimes you may want to destroy one or two if they get directly in your path like that one. As I reach the ladder on the end and back out of the water. Once out of the base, keep swimming over to the right side and you'll make it to another small cutscene. Out of that scene, you'll be back on dry land now. Head over to the left, jumping over the landmines until you make it to the next target segment, or that same one we did pretty much before. We just have to do it again now because we're crossing that same path. Once you're able to destroy all of those targets, keep heading over to the left side, watching out for the landmines if you're on that bottom level. Then once back out to this part, keep going to the left side, you'll find the remains of Poseidon, and go inside there. Once we're back out, we're going to be heading to the hotel first, and we'll actually get another cutscene and get our health replenished before heading to the next part. Once back out, keep going to the left. Watch out for some of the motorcycle enemies. You can jump up this at the end, the stairs. Be careful though when going between the screens. It's very easy to go back and forth just by like pressing up and stuff while jumping. Then you want to just keep going to the right past the next couple of screens until you make it back over here and the motorcycle's chasing you again. Make it back to the hotel and enter inside of there. After the lengthy and lovely cutscene outside of the hotel, we're going to head back over to the left here. Destroy any motorcycle that comes at you if you need to. Make sure you press up here. Then head left a little bit, up again on the stairs. And then this time we're going to actually go past the Parthenon. There are a few enemies you'll have to deal with along this path. On the next screen we have those ninja ladies again, as well as bazooka people. Watch out for the flying kicks. I like to get them off screen as quick as I can. And then for the bazooka people, it's just timing with the missiles, just jumping in between their shots in order to avoid them. If you do a nice jump at the end, you can actually get it where you can jump in between the enemies and not get hit by any of them and reach the next cutscene. Here we actually have a boss. All you need to do for this boss is keep firing at him, keep hitting him. All he does is when you get him to appear is he'll fire at you a bunch. Make sure you have full health. You should. After we just had that cutscene, you should at least have a good amount of health. And every time he will keep firing at you, you keep firing at him. And then after he gets done, he'll jump over your head, quickly turn around, and repeat the process. You need to land a good amount of shots before, but once he is taken care of, we can move out of this segment and on to the next part of the game. Next up is another flying segment. This one's pretty much more of the same from what we did last time. It really isn't all that different. The only, I think, new addition really is the submarines that you cannot destroy. You just have to move past them in between their missile shots. And you usually get a pretty good amount of time to do that. This also is a good place to replenish my health and get that filled back up after that boss encounter. Unfortunately, the Mafat Conspiracy is like the last of the Golgo 13 video games. It would have been nice to actually see this series continue on to the Super Nintendo and onward, just because it did mix up so many genres. Even if they aren't all perfect, it still was cool to see them all kind of combined into what would in a lot of games be just one of these. Eventually you'll come to another one of those target segments. Pretty simple one. You have 3 planes to deal with, a couple of helicopters, as well as a submarine boat in the water to deal with. Thankfully it's pretty easy, the battleship thing to deal with. Just a couple of shots and you destroy an entire giant ship. Not a whole lot of strategy really, other than just blasting the enemies as they appear and watching out for the ones that come up from behind, that you don't get hit too many times by the ship itself. Other than that, you really shouldn't have too much trouble, and it's a nice little break. While it is pretty lengthy, we are thankfully coming up to the end here, where we find out that the Copter actually has a bomb planet inside of it and blows up, and we escape via a parachute. Act number 6 begins with us in a scuba diving segment. Start off by swimming off over to the right side, watching out for, of course, a few scuba divers, as well as the sharks that are going to try to attack you. It won't be long before you make it to a target segment, dealing with some submarines as well as scuba divers. I recommend, if possible, take out the submarines first, just because they will end up dealing out more damage than the scuba divers. Once out of the segment, keep on heading over to the right. Always watch out for the evil, like, seaweed that's there. That purple stuff, it will end up hurting you. And the landmines are quite deadly as well. But practice with your movement with the scuba diving is actually pretty fluent, where you're able to kind of just really quickly turn and go straight in directions depending upon what you press on the D-pad. And because of that, you can actually swim pretty easily around the landmines. You just have to practice a bit, especially on the later ones, to kind of swim in between them, but it is possible. Another target segment right after that, destroy the sub first and then focus on the few scuba divers that you have to deal with. Keep heading to the left and then down as soon as you see an opening, watching out for the octopus, and then head over to the right here. Unfortunately, you have to deal with another target segment. Take out the submarine once again first if possible, then deal with those scuba divers. Keep heading over to the right, watching out for the mines and more seaweed that's sticking out there. Watching out and kind of slowly swimming along the ceiling, you can get past them. It's a little tricky though, and then you have a shark that you have to deal with as well. We are thankfully right near the end. We just have to swim through a few more mines in order to reach the ladder above here. Once out of the water, head over to the right side. This is pretty similar to other areas that we've already dealt with inside these bases. Same enemies and the like. And thankfully you can once again kind of go between the levels to escape some of their attacks. Once you reach the end though, you get your next cutscene. Now it's time for another first-person perspective maze. Yay, more fun! We're going to start off by blowing up that one wall, working our way around a corner, and then firing at the first enemy that we come to. Go through this door. Like I said, I won't give every direction during this, but I'll give a few as we make it through here. Inside this room is the first cutscene inside this place. Destroy this wall here, and then you're going to go through around the corner here and into the door. Unfortunately, I walked one step too far past it, so I had to back up a little bit. Take out this soldier located here. You're going to see that split, but we're going to go down past it and around the corner and reach another one of these grenadable walls. Working our way around, you'll come to another door on the left side. Enter inside there. And this is where you'll find this. From there, exit back out of the room. Once you go around this corner, you'll have another one of those grenadable walls to deal with. Right after that, a soldier, so we get our grenade back, thankfully. We're going to enter inside of this door. Down here and inside here. Turn around and enter inside of this room. Act number 7 begins with us heading off over to the right side, being attacked by a few motorcycles. So even though the levels have changed up, the enemies have not. You've pretty much seen, I think, every enemy in the game at this point. Here we reach our first target segment of this area, taking out the soldier guys on the bottom, and then I'm going to go up into the air to finish off the helicopters that are flying above. Take out a couple of regular soldier guys, and then some more motorcycles, and there's a lot of them bouncing around. Thankfully, the jump kick can actually help you out a bit. Eventually, you'll make it to the Fang Backs building. Oh boy, this is the maze that is the worst maze in the game. During this maze, I will show you how to kind of like run through some of these electrical fields, dealing with them, as well as getting health. There is a health vial located in the maze as well to kind of replenish yourself. We're going to start off by heading towards that so I can have full health here in this level. We're going to go down here, deal with this soldier, go through this door, and then if you make a quick turnaround and go all the way down, you'll find yourself the health potion laying on the ground. Then backtrack to the previous room we were just in a moment ago. Unfortunately, the grenadable walls constantly get replenished, so if you go past, like, out of the room, come back, go through it again, it's going to be there, so you have to deal with it. Down and around the corner, destroying a grenadable wall, turning around at this door and heading on inside. Turn though, so you can make it to a different segment of the same room where you'll find a key. There's a lot of doors in here, and there's a key on the one segment. Then go through here and you'll fall down to the floor below. Now, rarely in any game do I like to intentionally lose a life, but this will be one case that we do intentionally lose a life, and that's during this dungeon, just to make things a little bit easier. That'll be coming up in just a bit. Here we make it to this purple room. That's how you know you've made at least a little bit of progress, I guess. We're just going to blow up the first room and then enter inside. You'll reach a ladder, head down, and just turn around and go through the next door. Like I said, it's a lot of turning and going through random doors. Be careful of the electrical field. The other enemy that you deal with, the samurai-like guy, will appear, and you only get a moment or so to fire at him before he ends up jumping and attacking you, and then he goes behind you and repeats the process, which can be annoying. At the end of that whole segment, we reach another ladder, heading on down into another purple segment. Down the next ladder, we reach a red segment. So you can see we've traveled quite a bit, so we're going to end up losing that life intentionally just to speed us getting back towards the beginning, which is where we need to be in order to reach the exit once we get the items that we need. Here's another health vial, so you can get that one and replenish your health as well. Destroy all of the samurai guys throughout these hallways. Hopefully you get the timing down. Like I said, you gotta be quick on them, but that's because I'm also expecting them during this segment. The first time you come through, you're probably going to be like, oh, who the heck is this? And he'll end up getting at least one hit on you before you're able to figure it out. Here, we finally find Golgo 13's gun. So we have Duke's gun. From there, we're just going to go ahead and lose our life intentionally. That way, you see, it says to be continued, and it's actually like we're going into episode number 2, or manga number 2 here. Just follow my path here as we reach back into the game, and that way we can reach the exit and move on to the next area of the game. And thankfully, this is the final one of the tough mazes. There's a couple of more first-person mazes, but they're nothing compared to what this one was. This one's just a complete nightmare, and probably more runs than anything were destroyed by this particular level and maze. We're now in the jungle. Start off by heading off over to the right side. If you keep going right too far, you'll just end up looping back around. So you have to look for it, an entrance between the trees. It's not too hard to tell where it is, but you do have to keep an eye out for it. If you're unsure where it is, you can always just keep pressing up on the background until eventually you find it, but it's a little ways into the area. With these bazooka and the ninja ladies, it's sometimes best just to destroy them if possible, though so annoying when they're ducking there and you're unable to hit them. As you can see, the two trees, it's kind of like a perfect opening, and that's where we're heading inside. Then head to the left. Watch out though, there are landmines that are scattered around the ground as well as the other enemies that you're dealing with. Honestly, I like the landmines a little bit better than dealing with the bazooka people. During this segment, though, you will end up running into one of these target segments. No surprise, you're not going to escape them for long, right? This one's just soldiers jumping out of the trees and the like. Not too bad, but they can deal a pretty decent amount of damage, so be careful. Keep heading to the left and go through this opening, and you'll get to the next cutscene. This leads us into a new scuba diving segment. Start off by heading off over to the right side, watching out for the shark enemies as well as the scuba divers as well. There's a lot of them that are going to appear, but thankfully near the top of the screen is relatively safe. It's not perfectly safe, but relatively safe. Not long into it though, you will run into a target segment where you'll deal with a bunch of scuba divers. I love when they bunch up just so you can get those multiple shots off in a row and destroy a few in quick succession. Once they're done, keep on heading over to the right side. Eventually, all these fish end up appearing, these piranhas that can end up being a little bit of a nuisance, but thankfully we come to the end and we reach another cutscene. Act number 9, Apocalypse Now. Start off by heading off over to the right side, watching out for the landmines that are scattered along the ground. You have to kind of jump individually between them, which is pretty annoying, but not too bad to do, just be careful. Right before you reach the end though, you'll have to deal with one of these. Basically, this whole area is each screen, you have to deal with a target segment. It's annoying, and they're quite a pain in the butt. You have to deal with tanks as well as helicopters and the like. but it's not too challenging. It's just that you have to do so many of them in a row. Deal with the couple of bazooka guys during this segment and reach the next one of the target sessions. They can deal a lot of damage. As you can see, you just kind of have to be careful and destroy them as quick as you can, especially the vehicles on the ground. They can deal quite a bit of hefty damage. On to the next screen. Watch out for the platform enemies. Destroy them if possible. Their weird projectiles can get annoying, so if you can shoot them before they fire them out, like getting them from afar, it's best. Here we have another target session. Tank on the ground, as well as 5 helicopters that we have to deal with in the air. One more helicopter left. And we're on to the next part here. More of the same that we've been dealing with. Now you have the wonderful turrets here. So annoying, as well as all these other enemies that just keep falling from the sky consistently. For the next target thing, you have 4 helicopters as well as 2 tanks or 2 land vehicles to deal with. This is thankfully the last one of them that we have to do during this particular level, at least. At least we have a cutscene before we have to do another one of these. Keep heading over to the right, dealing with the few enemies that are going to get in your way. Eventually you'll come to the end and the next cutscene. Act number 10, From Here to Eternity, starts off with a flying segment here. This one in the dark, basically. Kind of a cool color scheme for everything, but it's pretty much more of the same. It is a tad bit more difficult, for sure, but it is still pretty much more of the same as far as the flying segments go. Once again, be very careful of the submarines. It can be a little difficult to see the missiles, but wait for that opening when they stop firing in order to quickly get past them. During the barrage of planes, you can just kind of keep firing out steadily, and hopefully you'll hit at least one or two. Target segment, you'll have a few things to destroy here, including one of the boats below, and then a couple of planes and helicopters. Thankfully, they're pretty easy to see. Unfortunately, though, sometimes if you miss just a little bit, you end up missing. Of course, it doesn't end up counting and can make the battle so much worse or take longer just because you end up missing those few shots. Though honestly, for the most part, the game's not too bad as far as the aiming and actually getting the shots to land. Here you'll have a gauntlet of the submarines in a row that you'll have to kind of get past. It's not too challenging really, but you do have a few of them that you'll have to quickly get past once the missiles stop shooting up for that few precious moments. There isn't anything really new introduced during this, it's just, like I said, more of the same that we dealt with in the last helicopter segment. Eventually, though, you will come to the end, and we make it to the next segment. Alexander Island, which is an island located off the coast of Antarctica. Same outfits that we've been wearing the whole time. You know, the enemy's wearing the same outfit, we're wearing the same outfit. I guess it's perfectly warm enough for Antarctica to make it through. But we're going to jump over the bazooka guys and make our way over to the far right. Eventually you'll come to a target segment. This one's similar to the one we were dealing with just before with the boat, as well as a few planes and helicopters to deal with in the air. I recommend taking out the boat first, then focus on the helicopters and planes. Once out, keep on heading over to the right side, dealing with the jump kicking ladies. I recommend taking them out if you can't outrun them, just because there is a bunch of them during this segment. If there's only one or two, you could outrun them, but with like 3 or more and then the bazooka people, you may end up running into a problem with them bunching up on you and destroying you in just a few moments. Thankfully, right at the end of that segment, we go right into act number 11, The Godfather. Thankfully, this next maze segment isn't too bad. There are some enemies to deal with, but we start off by just going around all of these corridors. Let's make it all the way around and then down the ladder to a gray area. From there, you follow it around to the next door, turn around in the next room, and you'll find a health potion, so you can replenish all your health. Make it into this hallway and start working your way around to another door, and you'll find another cutscene. Act number 12, in the Twilight. Now Act 12 has a little bit to it, including another boss encounter that we're going to start off with. This boss is a little bit different. As soon as the fight begins, we're not going to really fire at the boss. Instead, we want him to jump over to the other side. Like here. As soon as he lands, we fire at him. That actually hurts him. Then turn around and repeat the process. Wait for him to land, and then immediately fire at him in order to deal damage. You only have to do this 3 times, and the boss is defeated. And we get to keep moving on to the next segment. Work your way around this maze. It's nothing really too much of a pain to do. We're going to go in here. You don't have to go into this room. This is another kind of like unnecessary little extra room, but I will show it anyway. You can use your grenades. It's not like we're going to need them for the rest of this area. I pick up a large crate of ammo, which replenishes your ammo all the way back up to 400, which I already pretty much had. I had like 395 before I picked it up, but still have that, as well as the health thing, which I didn't really need as well, but I wanted to show where those are located, so if you play the game, definitely go in there and pick those things up as we head into the final segments of the game. As we exit out, we do have a few enemies though that we have to defeat along the way. Be very careful going through the electrical field. Like I said, you can time it to kind of go in between, but it's tricky to do so for sure. Sometimes I'm able to do it perfectly, and other times I just mess it up bad and end up getting hit a bunch. Once out, head over to the right side. This is a pretty tricky segment, so keep as much health as you possibly can during it. I know that's something that's hard to do, but you want to try to keep as much health as you can during this segment. Watch out for all the enemies, and eventually you'll make it to the water and go into another scuba diving segment. Now there's no enemies, but there are landmines to deal with this, and one more shooting target session before the final boss, which works pretty much like the target sessions work, so you should have plenty of practice by now with the targeting segments in order to be ready to take out that final boss. Swim between the mines. Like I said, it can be a little bit difficult. Drop down, and we're going to head over to the right more. Here we're going to run into this, which can be a very difficult one. Take out the boat first, the submarine if possible. If you run into anything before the submarine, take those out, of course. As you can see, anything pretty much hitting you during this does a lot of damage. There was many runs where I lost at this spot. I would completely be able to beat the whole game up to this point and die here as well. It's just heartbreaking considering how close this is to the end. The final boss also took a little bit of practice in order to finally get down as well, but once I figured it out, I was able to usually best the boss. Swim up here between the landmines, and then keep going to the right. Try to watch out for the enemies if possible. The end part here is really tricky, but with a lot of practice, I was able to swim around these mines. And that's really just because of the precision movement with your swimming. You just move very swiftly through the water by hitting the direction buttons. Now it's time for Act 13, the final act of the game. We have a little bit of walking that we have to do, but then it's time for the final boss of the game. Try to keep, of course, as much health as you possibly can before we reach the door here at the end where we reach that boss encounter. There is a lot of enemies, so it can be difficult for sure, but eventually you'll come to the door and you get another cutscene before the final boss fight begins. Okay, for this boss, you have 3 minutes to do it, but actually less than 3 minutes because when the clock hits 13 seconds, you lose. Why 13? I have no idea, but 13 seconds, you lose. I mean, obviously, the game's called Golgo 13, but still, other than that, I don't know why 13 seconds would end the game. Start off by immediately going above the first 2 of the clone pallets. Destroy the buttons above them first. They're going to create clones. Don't focus on the clones yet. Destroy the first 2 buttons. Then go down and destroy the clones that they created. The clones have 3 forms to them. They start off in the background, then they get close, and then they turn into a flying head. So make sure you destroy all 3 before getting away, moving away, or else the flying skull in particular can deal a lot of damage. Once you've dealt with all the first set of the clones and you've destroyed those first 2 buttons above those first 2 pods, then move on to the next pods. Once those pods have been destroyed, as far as destroying the button above them, then go down and destroy more clones. Once you've destroyed a few of them, head back up and go to the next set of flashing things above the clone machines and destroy them. It'll take a lot of shots. Some of them only take a few shots, other ones take a lot of shots. Like this one right here in the middle only takes a couple of shots in comparison to the other ones. Make sure they're all destroyed, then go and destroy the clones. You should hopefully have a lot of health that you can deal with this. If you end up losing a life, you can start right back from this battle and you have full health. So at least you can do that. Once you have destroyed all of the clones this time, there should be new moving flashing things above this part. This is the final part, really. You have to destroy all these. They keep moving, so it's hard to hit them, but you just want to keep on moving back and forth and firing as quickly as you can, mashing the button, using turbo, whatever you prefer to use. Just keep firing at them as they're moving back and forth in order to destroy them. Then finish off the final one. The battle isn't quite over once you've destroyed the last one of these things. The brain will then kind of reveal itself, so go over to the right side where that is and fire at it, the exposed thing here, and then the brain will actually fly up into the air. This takes you to a sniper segment similar to the one we did early on in the game, where you snipe the brain, and now you can sit back and enjoy the ending, the Golgo 13 on the NES. Yep, not much of an ending. You just get that one screen with text, and then it goes through the cast of all the characters, roll call, and then into the actual credits for the game. After doing all of that, you think you would get a little bit more of an interesting ending, especially considering how cinematic overall the game is with all the cutscenes and the like, but unfortunately, nope, that's just not the case with Golgo 13, the top secret mission. You just kind of get a basic ending, and that's it. Golgo 13 is such an interesting game just because of all the mixes of gameplay. They aren't perfect, but it's still just so cool to see so many in one NES title back then. It's a game that I have fond memories with, even though I had a lot of trouble with it as a kid and couldn't really appreciate it until I was older, which now I very much enjoy the title as well as its sequel, Conspiracy, which I will get to down the road. But as the credits finish up, we then get the end on screen, and with that, that's going to wrap up this episode of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.